Muhammad Ali's hands wouldn't stop trembling as he walked through the marble hallways of Saddam Hussein's palace. But it wasn't fear making them shake. It was Parkinson's disease, the cruel irony that had stolen the grace from the hands that once floated like butterflies. What happened in the next 2 hours didn't just shock the world. It redefined what courage looks like when everything seems impossible. August 1990, Saddam Hussein had just invaded Kuwait and 15 Americans were trapped in Iraq, engineers, oil workers, businessmen who had become human shields in a dictator's deadly game. The US government had tried everything: diplomatic channels, secret negotiations, economic pressure. Nothing worked. Saddam was using these hostages as leverage, and everyone knew that when the bombs started falling, these 15 Americans would die with them. Muhammad Ali was watching the news coverage from his home in Michigan. At 48, the greatest boxer who ever lived was a shadow of his former self. His hands shook constantly, his speech was slurred. He'd been retired for 9 years, but something about those faces on television, 15 terrified Americans thousands of miles from home, wouldn't let him rest. "Lonnie," he said to his wife, his voice barely above a whisper, "I have to do something." Lonnie Ali knew that look. It was the same expression he'd worn before refusing to fight in Vietnam, the same determination that had carried him through the rumble in the jungle. It was the look of a man who had made an impossible decision and nothing would change his mind. "What are you thinking?" she asked, though she already dreaded the answer. "I'm going to Iraq. I'm going to talk to Saddam Hussein, and I'm going to bring those people home." What happened next was perhaps the most audacious diplomatic mission in modern history. A former boxer with no government authority, suffering from a debilitating disease, decided he was going to negotiate with one of the world's most brutal dictators. And somehow, against every odd imaginable, it worked. Ali called Arthur Morse a businessman with connections in the Arab world. Morse thought Ali had lost his mind, but he understood something crucial. Muhammad Ali possessed something no diplomat, no politician, no government official had: universal respect in the Muslim world. This was the man who had sacrificed his prime years for his beliefs, who had stood up to the US government and emerged stronger. In the Middle East, Muhammad Ali wasn't just a boxer, he was a hero. The State Department's response was immediate and panicked: "Don't go. Saddam is unpredictable. He could use you for propaganda. He could take you hostage." Ali's response was polite but absolutely firm: "I'm going anyway." On November 26, 1990, Muhammad Ali boarded a plane to Jordan. The 10-hour drive from Amman to Baghdad was grueling for someone with Parkinson's. Every bump in the road a reminder of his body's betrayal. Baghdad was a city preparing for war. Tension crackled in the air like electricity before a storm. And here was Muhammad Ali, the most famous American in the world, walking straight into enemy territory. Iraqi officials didn't know what to make of him. Here was an American, technically their enemy, but also Muhammad Ali, the Muslim hero who had defied America during Vietnam. Their confusion was palpable. Ali's request was simple: "I want to meet with President Saddam Hussein to discuss releasing the American hostages." The response was laughter. The president doesn't just meet with anyone, maybe in a few weeks. But Ali didn't have weeks, so he found another way in. For 5 days, Muhammad Ali did something that no diplomat had thought to try. He became human. He visited mosques throughout Baghdad, praying with Iraqi citizens. He talked about Islam, about peace, about the brotherhood that transcends borders. He visited hospitals and orphanages, his trembling hands gentle as he played with Iraqi children who had no idea they were meeting the most famous athlete in history. Iraqi television covered everything. Here was an American who wasn't threatening them, who wasn't treating them like enemies. Here was Muhammad Ali, treating Iraqis with the same respect and dignity he showed everyone, regardless of politics or nationality. Slowly, public sentiment began to shift, and Saddam Hussein, watching all of this unfold, realized something important: Ali's presence in Iraq was making him look good. The most famous Muslim in the world had voluntarily come to Iraq during an international crisis. That was powerful propaganda, if he could control it. On the 5th day, Ali got the call he'd been waiting for. Saddam Hussein would see him. The meeting took place at the Republican Palace. Ali was led through hallways lined with armed guards, the tension so thick you could cut it with a knife. Every step was a reminder that he was in the heart of enemy territory, that one wrong word could turn him from a negotiator into another hostage. Saddam Hussein sat waiting in his office, military uniform immaculate, Cuban cigar smoking between his fingers, every detail calculated to project absolute power. This was a man who had used chemical weapons on his own people, who had tortured and executed thousands, who held hundreds of foreigners hostage like poker chips in his deadly game. But when Muhammad Ali walked through those doors, something extraordinary happened. Saddam Hussein stood up. His face broke into a genuine smile. For a moment, the man who terrified world leaders became what he truly was underneath all that manufactured terror, a boxing fan meeting his childhood hero. Muhammad Ali, the greatest! I have watched all of your fights. You are a true champion. Ali's hands shook as he extended them in greeting, but his voice was steady, carrying the dignity that no disease could touch. Mr. President, I come not as a politician, but as a Muslim, as your brother in faith. I come to ask for mercy. What followed was a 2-hour conversation that would change everything. Ali didn't negotiate like a diplomat. He didn't make threats or offer deals. Instead, he appealed to Saddam as one Muslim speaking to another about the fundamental principles of their shared faith. Islam teaches us mercy, Ali said, his voice growing stronger with each word. Islam teaches us compassion. These hostages aren't soldiers. They're not politicians. They're workers, fathers, husbands. Their families are suffering. Their children are waiting for them to come home. As a Muslim, as a father, I ask you to show mercy. But Ali was too smart to rely only on religious appeals. He understood Saddam's massive ego and played to it brilliantly. You are a powerful leader. You have shown the world your strength. Now show them your mercy. Show them that Saddam Hussein is not just strong, but also wise and compassionate. This will make you greater in the eyes of the world than any military victory ever could. Saddam listened, smoking his cigar, studying this trembling man who had somehow traveled across the world to plead for strangers. Here was Muhammad Ali, whose own government had once stripped him of his title and threatened him with prison, now representing American citizens with a dignity that put professional diplomats to shame. Finally, Saddam spoke. You are a brave man, Muhammad Ali. Most Americans were too afraid to come here, but you came. That shows true courage. He paused, taking a long draw from his cigar, then added, I will consider your request. The meeting ended without a clear answer, but Ali had accomplished something no diplomat had managed. He had made a personal connection with Saddam Hussein. He had appealed to the dictator's ego, his faith, and his desire to be seen as more than just a tyrant. Over the next few days, Ali continued his informal diplomacy. He kept visiting mosques and hospitals. He met with officials. He gave interviews to Iraqi television, always praising the Iraqi people while gently pleading for the hostages. Then, on December 2, 1990, the call came that would shock the world. Saddam Hussein would release all 15 American hostages to Muhammad Ali as a goodwill gesture. The official Iraqi statement called it a gift to the great champion Muhammad Ali, who has shown respect and brotherhood to the Iraqi people. The news exploded across international media. BBC, every major network led with the story. The State Department, which had warned Ali not to go, suddenly had to explain how a private citizen had succeeded where the entire US government had failed. Critics immediately pounced. Some said Ali had given Saddam a propaganda victory. Others pointed out that hundreds of other hostages were still being held. They weren't wrong. Saddam did use Ali's visit for propaganda, and he did only release a small fraction of his hostages. But none of that political posturing mattered to the 15 Americans who walked out of their detention with Muhammad Ali. They were going home for Christmas. They were going to see their families again, and they owed it all to a boxer with trembling hands who had refused to accept that nothing could be done. Paul Vincent, one of the released hostages, later described the moment. They came to us and said, "You're leaving today. Muhammad Ali has secured your release. We couldn't believe it. We thought we'd be there until the war started, and honestly, we didn't think we'd survive that. Ali saved our lives." On the flight home, the ordeal had taken its toll on Ali's declining health. He barely spoke, exhausted from the physical and emotional strain. But the hostages wanted to thank him, to understand why he'd risked everything for people he'd never met. "Why did you do it?" one of them asked. "You don't even know us." Ali's answer, spoken slowly due to his Parkinson's, was simple and profound. "You're human beings. That's all I needed to know." When Ali arrived back in the United States, the reaction was mixed. Many hailed him as a hero. President George H.W. Bush, while careful not to officially endorse Ali's unauthorized mission, sent him a private letter of thanks. The families of the released hostages were eternally grateful. But the story became even more remarkable in the years that followed. As the internet grew and social media exploded, Ali's mission to Iraq became the stuff of legend. Videos of his arrival in Baghdad went viral. The story was shared millions of times across every platform. Release of hostages became a trending topic decades after it happened. The phrase, "What happened next?" broke the internet. Became literal truth as new generations discovered this incredible story and couldn't believe it was real. Here was Muhammad Ali, hands shaking from Parkinson's, speech slurred, physically diminished, walking into one of the most dangerous places on earth armed with nothing but his conviction that every human life has value. Here was a man whose own government had once considered him an enemy, risking everything to save Americans who didn't even know his name. The greatest fight of Muhammad Ali's life wasn't against Sonny Liston or George Foreman. It wasn't even his battle against Parkinson's disease. His greatest fight was the one he fought for 15 people he'd never met, in a country on the brink of war, facing down a dictator with nothing but his unwavering belief in human dignity. He didn't knock out Saddam Hussein. He didn't overthrow a regime. He didn't stop a war. But he saved 15 lives. And sometimes, that's what heroism actually looks like. Not the dramatic victory that changes everything, but the stubborn, determined act that changes something for someone. The decision to try when everyone says it's impossible. The courage to walk into danger when you could safely stay home. Muhammad Ali taught the world how to fight in the ring. But more importantly, he taught us how to fight for what matters, with dignity, with faith, and with an unshakable belief that every human being deserves a chance to go home. In an age where the internet makes heroes and destroys them in the same news cycle, Ali's mission to Iraq remains a story that breaks through all the noise. It's a reminder that real courage isn't about being fearless. It's about being afraid and doing what's right anyway. Ali's hands were shaking when he walked into that palace. But his resolve never wavered, and 15 families got their Christmas miracle because one man refused to accept that some things are impossible. That's why this story broke the internet. Not because it was shocking, but because it was true. In a world full of cynicism and doubt, Muhammad Ali proved that heroes are real. And sometimes, they come with trembling hands and hearts full of hope.